Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of the Propulsion Swim podcast. And on this week's show, we are ramping up our build-up to British champs as we are speaking to Loughborough Performance Centre swimmer ELLIOT CLOGG.
Yeah, we've got ourselves a member of Mel Marshall's squad this week. He's one of those swimmers that has a potential shot of being on the backstroke leg of the men's medley relay for the upcoming Paris Olympics. So it is going to be interesting to get his thoughts on that event as well as some others as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's have a listen for what's in store on this week's podcast.
Yeah, I think that's really important that you've touched on that, because I feel like, you know, she gets a lot of talk about how she just, delivers for those three, her big names and stuff. But actually, the amount of time she gives to each and everyone in that squad, like even random people in public, she'll just who are coming in for a public swim after us on Saturday morning, she'll say hello to them, she won't shut herself off. And I think she's really underrated in that sense. I feel like you go there with a purpose of right, I've got this many weeks to be absolutely on it every session, and you've got no distractions either. You kind of just escape life when you go on a camp, because everything's there, everything's pretty much done for you, and you know what you're out there for. I think my body was just showing me that it was more towards the 100. We did some test sets of lactate build, how fast it builds up, how fast I can get to peak speed, how long I can hold peak speed. And it just showed me that I was more towards the 100 rather than the 2.
So far in 2023, the Propulsion Swimming podcast hasn't really touched a national centre. In the past, we have had on performance swimmers like your Duncan Scott, Adam Peaty, Tom Dean, Abby Wood. But in 2023, the performance centres have eluded us, and that is for a very good reason. They have been on training camp. They have been hard at work leading into this British champs, and essentially the Paris Olympic cycle is a big training block. And I'm really looking forward to welcoming ELLIOT onto this podcast so we can actually hear a little bit of behind the scenes of what's been going on in 2023 right at the elite end of British swimming.
Well, one of the questions we're going to cover is the difference between going abroad for a training camp compared to training in Loughborough, where ELLIOT is. And is there actually a difference to doing it that way? That's going to be one of the questions, as well as going through champs and his journey to a national centre or performance centre. I think that's quite key to get started as well.
Yeah. Don't forget that they're now rebranded as performance centres, not national centres, which is it's going to take some getting used to. But anyway, this is very much the beginning of our build-up into champs, and we can't wait to hear what ELLIOT has to say. So let's jump straight into this week's episode. ELLIOT, thank you for joining us this week. How are things with you? The body's a little tired, a bit worn out?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, first off. Looking forward to Taper, which is just around the corner. Body's feeling a bit heavy at the minute, so yeah, just really looking forward to coming down with the meters.
Absolutely. Now, we will touch upon Taper a little bit later on in this podcast, but this episode is very much going to be a little bit of a national centre, or I think it's now called performance centre, debrief for 2023 so far. So what you guys as a squad have been up to, training camps, and then we'll preview champs, which are just around the corner. So if we start off with, how has your journey been to get to this performance centre? How did you end up working with Mel?
Yeah, so I've known Mel for quite a few years now. I joined the centre back in the lockdown phase. So luckily, we were able to go and train in lockdown. I know some people weren't, but we were very fortunate to be able to get pool access through lockdown, which we were very grateful for. And back then everything was just going off. No one knew what the plan was. No one knew what was going to happen. And I'd always had a really good relationship with Mel. And I saw this opportunity come about because me and Mel get on so well, and we wanted to see what we'd be like working together. And I took the opportunity there to join the Loughborough National Centre from that lockdown training phase. And I've been there since then and still here now. So, yeah.
How does it work with you joining the squad? Are you offered a place? Do you have to pay your way? Is it funding based?
Um, I think it varies. I think sometimes it's based off, well, performance is obviously going to be one. You're going to have to be up there, certainly on rankings, I guess, to get in. Um, Probably your personality as an athlete. They're not going to accept maybe someone with bad behaviours and stuff like that. You've got to be, switched on and relationship as well, I guess. There wasn't really anything that was like you must do this to be a national centre athlete. It was just, she was believing in me, and we had a good relationship. And she said, "What do you think about it?" So yeah, that was kind of it really. And then just spoke to Bill about joining, and that was kind of it really.
Simple.
Yeah, was in. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you prefer the performance centre sort of way of training, because you have been back and forth with Sheffield and Loughborough?
Yeah.
Can you kind of go talk through that a little bit?
Yeah. So I used to swim at City of Sheffield for quite a number of years, from around 14 to around age 19, 20. So I think both programs are good. Both have their advantages and disadvantages. Obviously with the performance centre, we're very privileged, and we don't have monthly training fees. We have very good pool access, gym access. The whole Loughborough pool kind of works around us, which is very good. It's very nice to have that. Whereas when you're at a club program, it's kind of like, when can we get these training hours? You've got membership fees, you've got parking fees, you've got a yearly membership fee. So it is quite hard to be at a club program. But yeah, it doesn't mean it's worse. But everyone has individual needs, and some people might prefer a club program, some people might prefer a performance centre. But for me, I just thought, it's time to go to that next level, and I feel like the next level was the performance centre.
Yeah, absolutely. And you say Mel was a key part of that, so everyone kind of knows the work that she does for Adam, Luke, Anna. I guess they're the headline getters of the squad. But what does she do for you as a coach?
Yeah, I think that's really important that you've touched on that, because I feel like, she gets a lot of talk about how she just, delivers for those three, her big names and stuff. But actually, the amount of time she gives to each and everyone in that squad, like even random people in public, she'll just like, who are coming in for a public swim after us on Saturday morning, she'll say hello to them, like she won't shut herself off. And I think she's like really underrated in that sense. She does give a lot of her time to each and every one of us, no matter what achievements we've got, So yeah.
So you've never really considered another national centre. Is that purely because of Mel?
I think so, to be honest. Yeah. And just the group as well. I just think I've got a lot more in common with some of the people here. I'm obviously close to my home as well. My family home is Mansfield in Nottinghamshire, which is, kind of next door to Loughborough. So it's not too far away from home either, which was another factor that I thought about. Loughborough just seemed like the right place for me. And it definitely feels like that now as well. So,
how does it work with you and the squad as a whole then when you're training? Because your events kind of line up with Luke, I guess, in a way. Are you training partners, or do you have your own specific lane, your own program? How does it work?
Yeah. It's changed since I've been here over the years. I'd say when I first joined in that from that lockdown period, me and Luke were pretty much like together on most sets, both training for the 200 back and the 100 as well. Both doing similar sort of meters. He's usually sitting a bit above me, just because his base is like just crazy. Like he can just go and go and go. I've not fully been exposed to that like he has, which is why he just sat a bit higher. But yeah, we'd be pretty similar. However, now it's like kind of changed a little bit because I've come down to 100-meter training this season. So we've not been together as much. Some like aerobic sets, we'd still do the same. Sometimes we have group sessions, so we're all involved. But then the specific sets, I would be more to go with like Adam and Anna and Bella, Jacob, like more 100-y swimmers. And Luke would just still be grinding out those long 200-meter sets. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a bit of a machine, isn't he?
Yeah, just keeps going and going.
Yeah, do you prefer sessions that are more individualized for yourself? You don't prefer to have sort of a training partner by your side the whole time?
Sometimes I do. But yeah, I think individualized is the way forward, definitely.
Okay.
But even when we are individualized, it's sometimes still blended together with everyone, which is really nice. And Mel's really good at doing that. So like we could be on the same set and have like the same amount of hundreds in a set, but like Anna would do it slightly different to the way I would do it, and I would do it slightly different to the way Jacob would do it, you know. But we'd still be together, so it is kind of still having training partners, which is good.
Yeah, I was literally just at Stirling, yesterday, off recording this, and it's interesting to see how they get the squad dynamic to work together. So it's like adding in a lot of social kick, which maybe in a whole as a session plan as a whole, that probably doesn't add too much to an athlete's fitness or training, but actually as a squad dynamic, it gives you the chance to speak to people in the pool that, well, as you're on an individual training plan, you're not really going to cross paths with them too much. Is that sort of the same thing that goes on at Loughborough?
Sometimes. I mean, social kick for us, it's kind of just at the end of like swim down. Sometimes we'll try and ask Mel to give us the last 100 of it kick instead of what it's actually supposed to be. You know, sometimes she'll give it us, sometimes she'll do rock, paper, scissors for it, and we'll have to win to try and get it. But like you said, it's nice to just do a bit of social stuff like that, just to talk to everyone in the squad, even into like Dave's group. If some of them are doing social kick as well, like you can just socialize.
It's a chemistry type thing, really, to try and build everyone on, you know.
Yeah.
To be fair to Stirling, I'm probably over exaggerating how much they did, but they were just straight off the back of a hard competition and like a recovery swim. So that's very much what that was.
Yeah, don't blame them.
So one of the reasons that actually we've not covered a national centre so far in 2023 is because of training camps. So there's been a lot going on within British swimming, and you guys went to Australia. So without the obvious question of how was the sun, how was it out there? Was it a good training camp? How did it go?
Yeah, it was pretty amazing, not going to lie. For me, it was the first time going there on a training camp. I know Mel's squad's been a few times, but for me, it was a first going there as a camp, and loved it. Loved every second of it. You know, the training venue we were at, the Gold Coast Aquatic Centre, is amazing. They've got 2, maybe 3 50s, and then a 25 and a dive pit as well, all in like the same complex.
And then where the Commonwealth Games were?
Yeah. And then they've got the 2 gyms as well, all in the same complex as well. It's just crazy. But it's perfect for what we needed.
It's like a summer's paradise for us.
Yeah, literally.
What were your main focuses when you were out there? Is it literally just as simple as preparing you for long course season, or were there other things as well?
Yeah, I think, Mel really wanted us to be in a good shape when we got there. You know, she didn't want to spend like a week, 2 weeks of like building up that fitness, because, you know, we just had the Christmas break. So I only took 4 days off over Christmas just to try and keep that fitness up there, because we'd obviously rested a little bit into Edinburgh short course, and the people who were already in Australia had obviously tapered down for the Worlds. Just really wanted to start in a good place. We just started as soon as we got there, day one, straight into it, really. The objectives were, you know, get fit, get fast, get lean, get fit basically. get a tan.
Yeah, I've seen all of them. Jacob Whittle looks like a different person on poolside right now.
Yeah, he goes very dark. Yeah.
You didn't have to deal with jet lag or anything like that. You say you kick things straight in day one. How do they cope with a completely different time zone? It's a massive difference.
Yeah. Luckily, the flights over there were really good. No delays. We did land very late, but I think getting straight in the pool actually helped a lot more than just maybe having a session off, because you'd have to stay up anyway. So yeah, it was kind of like late on in the day, around like 6ish, 5:30, 6. Luckily, we were training 7 till 9 and 2 till 4 that first week when we got there, which was beneficial for us. But then as soon as we got back in that room after the 2 till 4 session, it was a struggle to stay awake. But yeah, it didn't affect the swimming, not for me anyway.
So you've talked about the facilities that they have, and obviously it's like a paradise, like I was saying. But what is the difference between the training that you did out there compared to what you could have done back in Loughborough?
For me personally, I just love being in the outdoors training on a camp. I feel like you go there with a purpose of like, right, I've got this many weeks to be absolutely on it every session, and you've got no distractions either. Like, you kind of just escape life when you go on a camp, because everything's like there, everything's pretty much done for you, and you know what you're out there for. Whereas when you're back home, you might have uni, you've got to sort your travel out and stuff like that. When you're on camp, you're always like a walk away from the pool. So there's a lot more distractions at home, which can obviously affect training. Even if you try hard not to, sometimes they do. So yeah, just being on a camp, having no distractions, knowing what you're there for is just so much better. And having the sun on your back, obviously, is just amazing.
It's always a big bonus.
Yeah,
always.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So obviously, like age group swimmers and club level swimmers aren't going to be going on training camps to Australia for the length of time that you guys went. But there is a big, or certainly me and Dan, it happens it's like almost every October half term, every February half term. Clubs will go away. So is there any advice that you would give for them when they are heading on maybe their first training camp, even if it is literally just for a week?
Yeah, definitely. I would say treat it as a camp rather than a holiday, because it's quite easy to, think, oh yes, we're going a week away in the sun, chill by the hotel pool or eat all the all-inclusive hotel food. But that's not your purpose of going on a training camp. That's your purpose of going on holiday when you're on the off season. Yeah, so that would be my biggest piece of advice. Just have a purpose of what you want to get out of the camp, and know that you've got no distractions while you're over there. You're there to swim, you train hard, and then you come back home, and just try and get the best out of yourself each day over there.
Yeah. And then how do you transition from camp to home then? How do you adapt to that? Because you've just had really warm, and then in this country, I presume you came back to snow. How do you transition for that, and how do you keep training high and morale high at that moment?
I mean, this one was quite different as well, just because I'd never been away for 6 weeks on a camp. I think the biggest camp I'd been was 3, so it was literally a double length camp. And then, like you said, coming back to sunny England was a bit of a shock to the system after being in vests and shorts every day for the past 6 weeks. Motivation, like you said, can drop. You've just been in the sun for that long, and then you go back to indoor swimming. Can be a little bit boring, but that's your home. You're back home now. You've got your goals from what you set for that training camp, and it's just going to be a waste if you come back and don't carry it on. So that's the big thing, really. Just coming back, having a little bit of downtime, a little bit of a reset, and then being like, right, let's keep it going, get back on it.
Some people have holiday blues. Do you get like training camp blues?
Yeah, definitely from this one as well. Yeah.
I bet you can't wait for the next one.
Yeah, I just love being in Australia. It was just so nice. Yeah, missing the sun so much as well.
Nice.
Has the next one been sorted, or is that not in the pipeline yet?
Not yet. potentially probably going back there same time next year, but I'm not
Okay.
sure. Yeah, not been finalised yet.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So at the point of this recording, then we are right off the back of Edinburgh. Is why you said you're so tired. Is part of the reason your taper is coming soon as well. So it wasn't a tapered meet. Do you look back at your own performances after a meet like that, or do you just park it and move on to the next one?
I always look back at the races, no matter if they're good or bad. You know, there's always learning there. Um, you're never going to have a perfect race, so you've always got to examine what went well and what went wrong. Like you said, this meet was very up and down. There was some swimmers who are having great swims, some swimmers not so well. But for me, I was very happy with my processes that I did. Okay, so like, you know, some starts and turns, just looking at the little details. The outcome, the race, like time, could have been better for me. But I've kind of moved away from that now and just kind of looking at, okay, what went well. Okay, the time wasn't so well, but I did this well. You know, and just take that forward. Yeah.
I mean, you say that you're targeting the 100, or you're more of a 100-meter swimmer now, but it seemed like the 200 looks quite good. Would you say that would be the case as well?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I wasn't actually doing the 200 back at Edinburgh. I was supposed to do it at Bucks, but unfortunately I got ill, so I couldn't compete there. And I was entered on the 100 free just because I had a bit of 100 free in my past, and I thought, oh, let's try it again, seeing as I'm doing 100 back training. But because I missed the 200 at Bucks, I thought, actually, I want to do a bit more back. So I just tried to get a late entry into that 200 back on Sunday, and thankfully they put me in. And yeah, like you said, the 200 looked a bit more better than the 100 did on paper with the time, which is very interesting just because like my training's sort of more towards the 100, and the time for the 200 actually looked better than the 100. So yeah.
Is that because the processes went so well? You said that the turns and the start were clicking that weekend?
What, for the 200?
For the 200, yeah.
I think it's just like expectation as well. You know, because I've always been towards the 200, and then I've kind of just dropped it this season, and then I thought, actually, right, let's just go into a 200 back right now, and I've literally thought nothing about it all season, and then just popped out a 201, which is, you know, better than last year when I was training for the 200. So yeah, my processes were good in both races, but I think, yeah, it was just a good race and no expectation, so no pressure, all those sort of things.
Changes things.
Yeah, no, yeah, literally it was just that, I think. So yeah.
Does that sort of swim in the 200 give you any inkling as to where your 100 is going into trials? Like, does it mean, or to you, does that mean, okay, I've got quite a good, strong back end to my 100 race because of this endurance is still there for my 2?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think can take a lot of confidence from the 200 that I did on Sunday, and I think it was the right call. You know, I just spoke to Mel and said, look, I just want to do a bit more backstroke before this weekend's over, just try and get me in the 2. Because I felt like I'd been rushing on the 100 back and slipping the water. And for me, I'm a very like technical backstroker. I like to feel the water quite a lot. I always get told off by Mel how much I say I'm feel like this, I feel this. You know, for that weekend, she said, right, you're not allowed to say feel. Yeah. But yeah, I just wanted to feel that relaxed backstroke again. And yeah, it just felt a lot more comfortable for me. So yeah, I can bring that into the 100 as well, definitely. Just relax a bit more on that first 50, and then I've obviously got the back end there to bring it home.
Yeah, if we look at like the landscape of men's backstroke swimming in this country, then I think the 100 is perceived as the slower race right now in British swimming. So is that why you're targeting the 100, because you see that as the best chance for you to make the squad?
I wouldn't say that's the reason, just because it's the slowest like backstroke event in the country. It's just I think my body was just showing me that it was more towards the 100. Like we did some test sets of like lactate build, how fast it builds up, how fast I can get to peak speed, how long I can hold peak speed. And it just showed me that I was more towards the 100 rather than the 2. I was shown that I would like produce too much lactate for the 200 to withstand it for that amount of time. So we thought, right, let's just give the 100 a big shot, because I'd never done that before. And even last year when I was still training for the 200, my 100 was better. Yeah, that's why we made the call.
Do you prefer it? Do you prefer it that way? Would you rather be the 100 rather than the 200?
It would be nice to be the 100, just because you've got the relay to go with that. And that's always a good thing, just being on a relay. But likewise, if I have the 2, I'd love to have the 2 as well. I think I was never going to rule it out of this trials anyway. It's the last day, might as well still do it. I'm still ranked 4th, I think, from my time last year. So there's no reason why I shouldn't still give it a go.
So moving forward, then you're starting taper. I would have thought end of this week, if not already looking at it now. So what does a taper consist of for you, or for swimmers who aren't aware of what a taper is?
Well, for swimmers who aren't aware of what a taper is, it's effectively you bring the intensity load down just so your body freshens up. You keep in like some skill work, some fast bursts of speed just to keep your body firing. But for me, usually it'd be like over a period of around 3 weeks. And I'd probably, let's say, start at 45k, drop to like 40, 38, and then the final week would be like 30k. I'm not sure if it's going to be exactly like this time. I'm actually having a meeting with Mel on Friday just to discuss everything properly. I'll know for certain what the meters is going to look like on Friday.
And tapers differ from swimmer to swimmer, and with you and Luke being 100 and 200 backstrokers, would you then have the same taper, or obviously different?
I think it'll be different this year, just because he's been doing a lot more aerobic training than I have. He's been higher weekly meters than me, so I'll definitely be doing less to start with. But maybe towards the last week it might look a lot more similar.
It doesn't change in length for each swimmer, so you'll all be starting kind of the wind off together, or does some people need to kick it down a bit earlier?
No, I think it's individual. Some people will start later and some sooner. I think especially some of the distance guys, I know that won't be starting taper until maybe a week to go.
I think with sprinters it takes longer to rest the muscles or whatever the science is, but the aerobic long distance guys need to keep it going and keep the meters quite high, otherwise it actually hits them worse as the race goes on.
Definitely.
So Champs is 3 weeks away at this point. What's your expectations heading in?
For me, my expectations is just to just enjoy racing. I've been doing it quite a few years now, racing at these British trials, and sometimes it's quite easy to put too much pressure on yourself, which can then affect your performance negatively. So for me, I'm just very much of, one day at a time, one thing at a time, not trying to think about it too much, because like I said, I don't want to put too much pressure on myself. I just want to just perform well. That's basically it, and just enjoy the race and enjoy what happens.
And enjoy the city of Sheffield.
Enjoy Pons Forge.
The heat of poolside. How's the rest of the squad looking?
Looking good. We're all getting a bit more fresh now. The gym's coming down as well, which I forgot to mention about the taper. You know, the gym will decrease as well. Yeah, we're all, you know, we're very together. We're a good group. There's only 7 of us in Mel's squad, but we all bring, you know, different things, and we can all talk to each other, which is very nice to have. There's no toxicity. Sorry, I couldn't really say that word. But everyone gets along very nicely.
Yeah.
And it's a good group. Yeah.
Beyond the obvious names, who should we be looking out for the week in Sheffield from your squad? Who do you reckon's gonna swim well? With that, it's easy to say all of them, isn't it?
It's classified. I don't know. I think we've all got a good shot. I always think Jacob's just he's always good at just swimming fast all the time. So I'm pretty sure he's going to do well, and I'd like to see him do well at it. He's a good lad. So yeah. But then, you know, I just want all of us to do well.
Yeah. I think Jacob was coming home quite strong in the 100 up in Edinburgh, for what I remember.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, cool. Elliot, well, this podcast has been a lot of fun, and best of luck for champs. But we do finish with some quick fire questions for our elite guests. So let's jump straight into it and say, what's your favourite event in swimming?
Favourite event? I'll have to say 2-back. Yeah.
Nice. Who is your swimming idol?
I mean, I've got idols, but I wouldn't say they're like in swimming, to be honest.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what then. Let's go away from the pool then. Let's go. What is your sporting idol? If there's nothing in swimming, is there any other sporting idol? Because it helps people get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah. I know he's very controversial, but I do like the way Tyson Fury's coming across with his mindset and stuff like that. You know, his books are very good as well. So I would say him as one of my idols. But I also love... Oh, go on. Sorry.
I think he's getting less and less controversial, actually, as time goes on. I think he's coming across better and better the more I see him.
I just know in the past that, like, I know a lot of stuff's been said about him. But yeah, I just remember, like, I met him at Sports Personality in 2018, and he was just, like, so happy to have a photo, have a, you know, just chat to us, have a laugh. And then obviously he's come out with all this stuff about his mindset and stuff he's had to go through. And I think he's just someone good to look up to. Yeah. I also love Formula One as well. And Lewis Hamilton is actually a big fan of I'm a big fan of Lewis Hamilton. So, yeah.
Nice.
Nice.
Next question then. What is your proudest moment in swimming so far?
Ooh, I think Commie Games 2018 was a proud moment for me. Not necessarily like the race in itself. It was just like kind of just everything about it. Like walking out to that massive stand was something I'd never experienced before. I think it was like 10 or 12,000 people on a built stand in Australia at the Gold Coast. So yeah, that was a very proud moment for me. And I think just making that, I always remember the first national final at 14. It was my first ever national final. I think it was the 100 back, and I went and won it. Yeah. So that was kind of a big proud moment for me. Yeah.
Good memory. Yeah.
What's the hardest set you've ever done in training?
It's been a few. I'm trying to remember. Mel likes to do this 2450s, all at pace, 100 return pace, all on 110, and that is pretty grueling. Yeah, and it's just like as soon as you miss a pace 50 and you can have one easy. But sometimes she'll just keep you going anyway, just keep you in there. So yeah, that's one off the top of my head that I can remember. Yeah, that was, we did that in Australia as well, so it's fairly recent as well. Nasty.
Nice. And final question to get to know you a little bit better away from the pool. If you were to go on a road trip, there's 3 spaces in the car. You could take friends, family, celebrities, the idols you've already mentioned. Who would you take with you?
Lampard in his prime in the car.
Nice.
I was always a big fan of Lampard when I was younger. And I love football as well. So, he takes one of the seats. I'll have to give the second seat to Hamilton. He can drive.
It's a bit of a sketchy drive.
Yeah. And then last seat, can't just be one person, but it'd have to be just my family, just for everything they've done for me. So if they can all sit in one seat, then I'll just put them in there.
Yeah. We'll get a 7-seater or something.
Yeah.
Well, Elliot, thank you so much for coming on to this week's episode of the Propulsion Swim podcast. It's been great to learn a little bit behind the scenes of what's been going on at a national centre so far this year. Best of luck for champs in a few weeks' time, and hopefully you can get your spot on the World Champs team.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Yeah, best of luck for trials, and it's a shame that you're back in the UK from Australia. I know you're going to get some holiday blues, but that's the way it is. But best of luck for best of luck for champs. Good luck.
Thank you. Cheers.
So Dan, champs very close now, and great to hear from someone who has a fantastic shot of making a team in what is what's this, the 3rd episode in a row, or 3rd episode in 5 weeks that we're going to say the 100 back is wide open and our mainly circled event. But interesting that his 200 performances have come on a lot stronger than he was expecting.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest takeaways, that he feels as though he did really well in that 200 backstroke, or the time was better in his 200 than the 100, is because there was no pressure. At Edinburgh, because there was no pressure on his shoulders, because he's now converted from that 200 swimmer to a 100 swimmer. So he's just doing it to keep himself busy. I think he said he's going to be doing the 200 backstroke at champs anyway, because it's on the last day. But there's no real pressure on his shoulders for that event, which I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that goes alongside his 100. We will be previewing all the events on next week's show. But the work that's been going on behind the scenes at these performance centres, we've obviously seen all of the sunny snaps in Australia, but there's serious work that went in, and it sounds like a grueling few weeks. I think, obviously, in the podcast, Elliot spoke about how his training has changed because he's now a 100 swimmer compared to previously a 200 swimmer, and the intensity that he was training out in Australia. But he also spoke to us just literally straight after the podcast was finished recording that his gym work had increased as well. So he went from something like 2 or 3 sessions to 5 sessions a week out in Australia, which is it's a lot of gym work for a swimmer. So getting that insight and knowledge into behind the scenes of a training camp like the performance centres did out in Australia is, I feel, invaluable for anyone who's listening in and young swimmers coming through the sport.
Yeah, it's interesting that he's got this mentality that he likes having an individualised programme. When we spoke to Johnny Marshall, he doesn't actually like that. He wants to be part of a team and have a training partner, which I thought, if you're in Mel Marshall's squad and you've got Luke next to you, the Olympic bronze medalist in the 200, and currently our best 100-metre backstroker, I thought you'd want to be next to him training, doing the same sort of stuff as him. But he prefers doing different things and he wants to do things himself. I thought that was quite interesting. The gym load is massive.
What do you reckon the reasoning behind the differences between those two swimmers liking individual and team then? Do you reckon it's a case of age because Johnny is still 18? Do you think it's America because there is that draw of the NCAA team event? Do you think that's the main reasoning? Because over here, if Elliot's in a performance squad, it's a squad of 7. That's a lot smaller than Johnny's Florida Gator squad, which is huge.
Maybe it's just a personality thing. Maybe Johnny just wants to be part of a team. He wants to go to the NCAs. He wants to be. He talks about his states being really tough, and he wants to race against the best. maybe Elliot just wants to do his own thing and concentrate on the clock rather than concentrate on Luke. Maybe that's just the way it is. So I think it's different for different people.
Yeah, we're not saying that male squad isn't close. It sounds like they certainly are, and there is a lot of social aspect into it, even though there is an individual program, which is interesting.
Well, he said that. He said that as well.
He absolutely did. And then it was the other takeaways of advice for young kids who are going on training camps. Remember, this is like, for some people, I know when we went on training camps, it was their first time on a plane. It was their first time abroad, but it's not a holiday. You're there for a reason, and your parents have spent good money sending you on a training camp, I'm sure.
Yeah, and it's not just about being in the sun, being outside. He talks about the facility straight away, but it wasn't about that. It's about having no outside pressures or no distractions is what he used. Yeah, so there's no, you have to cook for yourself. You don't have to clean. You have to travel to and from the pool. Well, yes, you do. You have to walk 2 minutes maybe rather than drive 5, 10, 15 minutes. So all of those distractions are out the way, and it's literally all 100% swimming. And so I think that's the reason why I would recommend going on training camps if you're an age group swimmer to experience that, because that's what these elite guys do once, maybe twice every year.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's life lessons as well on training camps.
Oh, yeah.
We can testify to that. Anyway, taper is now probably started by the time this podcast goes live for the main guys. Our preview of British Champs is coming next week, which is probably one of our biggest podcasts of the year. So make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get this podcast. And we will see you guys in 7 days' time, as Champs is right around the corner.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you for listening, everyone, and we'll catch you on the next one.
You've been listening to the Propulsion Swimming Podcast with Scott and Dan. We want to thank you for joining us and invite you to subscribe to the show, as well as checking out the Propulsion Swimming YouTube channel for weekly tutorials and videos to get your swimming fix. We will be back next week. Until then, we'll catch you on the next one.